Hey everybody, welcome to Season 4, Small Boat, Big Ocean TV. Today is April 13th, and we are on our way to Bob K. Marine in Spring City, PA. Yesterday we put Howie T in one of the work bays at Bob K. Marine, and today we're going to be doing oil change on both engines and then replacing the starboard engine water pump. And we like to alternate engine water pump replacements. So that means last year we did our port engine water pump. This year we're replacing our starboard engine water pump, and then next year we'll do the port again. And I'll let Bob explain the reasoning why we chose that frequency to change water pumps. So looking forward to getting some work done today, so stay tuned and we will be right back. Small Boat, Big Ocean TV is brought to you by Howie T Sport Fishing, Bob K. Marine, and Salt Weather, the ultimate marine forecast app. The work for the day started out with very basic maintenance, draining the old oil and replacing the oil filter. So I'm not going to bore you with that. I want to jump right into the problem we found when we got to changing the water pump. All right, so we just started to drain the lower units, starboard and port. So what I want to show you guys is what happens when you have a seal that looks like it might be going bad in the lower unit. So I'm going to take a look at the starboard. And as Bob called it, you can see the milk. That means we have a slight leak of water's getting in and mixing with the oil in the lower unit, compared to the port, which has clean, green, lower unit oil. Yep.
Attaboy.
So,
Yeah,
what would cause that? Just a seal going bad?
Yeah, we either got a prop shaft seal or the seal underneath the water pump or the shift shaft seal. So what we'll do is remove the gear case, remove the prop, and before you do anything, you make sure the prop isn't bent, the prop shaft isn't bent, and we check the flexion. So before you disassemble it, you want to make sure the prop shaft isn't bent, or we have deflection, meaning a worn bearing in the carrier that could damage a prop shaft seal.
Got it.
If the prop shaft looks good, then you go ahead and disassemble, and then we reseal it.
Got it. All right.
Okay? And,
So we got some work for next week.
Then you'll pressure test and vacuum test the gear case, and you always put a new water pump on it while you got the lower unit down anyway, and then we should be good for the season.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
And the next step then was to drop the starboard lower unit. Once we got the lower unit dropped and on a rack, it didn't take Bob long at all before he found out what was causing the
There's
leak.
the cause of our leak. Little crack, corrosion right there.
Corrosion here also.
Yep.
Prop shaft seal.
Because we were going to have to reseal the lower units, there were two parts that we had to order. One was a new prop shaft carrier and seal because it was cracked. And the second was we'd have to order a new drive shaft bearing housing and carrier in order to completely reseal the lower unit.
The bearing pack is torqued with that nut.
Mm-hmm.
This drive shaft has a double bearing pack.
Well, okay.
It's got a bearing on top of a bearing,
Okay.
and then it's held together with that 15/16 nut.
Yep.
And the bearing preload is set with that nut.
And when you say preload, that's the
Yeah, there's
torque.
no up and down,
Yep.
and the amount of force it takes to turn it. Very, but
Yep.
that's already preset.
Yep.
So
Now, how tight are you going down on that?
we're going to just snug this, really. Now that that's done, before we put the carrier in, we ought to take this plastic shift shaft housing out. And we have seals for that. Seal. Wheel bearings or whatever. If you're real careful with some of this stuff, you can use it. You just kind of. The main thing is when you use one of these, whether it's a prop shaft seal or whatever, is you don't want to mar the edge where the seal, the shoulder of the seal rides. When you go to pull it, you want to make sure you don't mar it because it's, it's a general purpose tool. So you got to have a feel for it. And seeing what I just did there, I pulled it without, touching the edge. It's the same thing if you're going to use it to remove a carrier seal. You don't want to mar the aluminum. But anyway, sometimes, believe it or not, even though it's nylon, you still have corrosion, see? Even though it's nylon, it'll still have corrosion on it. And you want to get this all cleaned up. And usually what I do is I scrape it with a...
So what is that? Just debris, sand?
Yeah, it's corrosion. It gets in there, and you want to clean it all up before you put it back together. So what I do is I pre-scrape it, and then I'll clean it in the parts cleaner. Get this cleaned up. For those that are home, you should be wearing gloves when you do this. I use kerosene. I don't use Safety Clean, so it's not as bad on your skin, but regardless, you should be wearing gloves. Okay. Hot and cold, there's not a whole lot of oil up in this area, and with the hot and cold you will get some corrosion up here. You just want to make sure everything's clean. Your O-ring's going to sit right, you know what I mean? And of course this washer is going to sit there, and it's going to give pressure against that. Nobody's perfect. Then what I do here is I use lacquer thinner or degreaser because that is nylon. It's slippery, and I want that seal secure. So I want to get that greasy parts cleaner, lower unit oil, out of that area, before I put that seal in. Now, there's a couple of rules of, depending on what manufacturer you went to school with. Mercury recommends Loctite Type A here. OMC back in the day uses OMC sealant or Perfect Seal. They're in the Mercury world. In the OMC world, that sealer is no longer available. We use aviation sealant. I prefer the aviation sealant over the Loctite Type A. The reason being is the Loctite Type A on aluminum, if you're doing a seal on the carrier like this here, and you're pressing that seal in there with Loctite Type A, if you ever got to replace that, you could cause damage to the aluminum trying to get it out. So I try not to use it. Okay, I know Mercury recommends it. I don't. I use aviation sealant, which is what they're selling in place of Perfect Seal. I've been so busy, I haven't ran down why they don't make Perfect Seal anymore. The manufacturer must not make it for Mercury and OMC. So when you order it, they're sending you aviation sealant. Okay? So, we're going to put it in just the way it came out. And because it is nylon, just notice how easy it presses in there. It presses in there real easy. See that? Okay. And we're going to put this O-ring on. And I'm going to use aviation sealant here too. What's nice about this stuff, gas and oil doesn't permeate it, and it stays pliable, and corrosion really doesn't affect it. So, God forbid if I ever had to take this apart again in the future, it'll come apart. We're going to put this back just the same way it came. We got the grease in there to preserve it, right? We'll line that up. And because it is nylon, it's gonna push right down. We cleaned everything anyway. So when I do work on this stuff, I do use rubber sometimes, rubber mallets, you know, to line things up, or tap, to get them to line up. Now, as you see, we had to heat one of these bolts. Sometimes when you're taking this stuff apart, quick, fast heat is the key, not slow heat. You want the aluminum to expand quick, so around the bolt, so you can get the bolt out. Slow heat, you're going to heat the bolt and the aluminum at the same time, which absolutely doesn't fit your needs. When I put these type of bolts together, I use the Mercury 24C. It's got Teflon in it, and I do prefer greasing these up because someday I might have to take it apart again. You break a stainless steel bolt in aluminum housing, you boat mechanics out there know what it's like to drill a stainless steel bolt out of aluminum housing. I take it down, I stuff it up. Like I said, everything has a torque valve, even spark plugs for crying out loud. When you're doing a carrier, a lot of times the prop shaft is shimmed with some type of shim, whether it's Mercury, Yamaha, or Suzuki, Honda. Depends on what you're working on. You always double check this, okay? I prefer to remove this before you take it and clean it in the parts cleaner. God forbid if it falls out and you didn't notice it. That takes care of what we call prop shaft end play. So you gotta make sure that's in there. All right? Now, carrier. There's two rules of thought on this also when we go to put this in. Some people use the Perfect Seal or the aviation sealant here, and some use the 24C or grease. Mercury recommends an assembly loop, but 24C or the Perfect Seal aviation is fine. This one I'm going to use aviation, and I'll tell you why I'm going to use aviation on this. We had to heat the carrier to get it out of here. When you heat the carrier to try to remove it out, I get it to move slightly, and then I cool the aluminum down. You don't want to take the hot carrier out and let this housing egg-shaped in any way, and that's what happens. So what I do is I move the carrier and then let it cool down, so it doesn't egg-shape. So I'm nervous anyway when I have to do this, so I'm going to use the aviation sealant. I'm not going to use the grease on this. It's just my preference. It's what I use the sealant. And why? Because we had to heat that there. And this just gives me a little feel good, you know what I mean? Instead of grease. Mercury recommends assembly lube. I'm going to put it here just for corrosion reasons. I'm working on this kind of stuff. Okay.
Yep.
Make sure this is lined up. On top of two. Yeah. work on this stuff long enough, you know what to look for, you know what I mean? Ship shaft, we got that done, that's done, okay. At this time, I'm not expecting any serious problems, so we're gonna go ahead and do the water pump, okay? Because this is threaded, we could vacuum test and pressure test it now. I'm not expecting any serious problem, because this is a threaded piece. Some product like Mercury, this is a nylon housing and it's pressed in, and the water pump base holds it down. And if you put pressure, it can pop it out. You know what I mean? Same with the shift shaft. But this is a threaded piece, so we could pressure test and vacuum and test it now. I'm not seeing any problems, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a water pump and be done with it. Okay?
That's going to do it for this episode, but please tune in next episode where we address the water pump install and the vacuum and pressure testing. Small Boat Big Ocean TV is brought to you by Howie T Sport Fishing, Bob K Marine, and Salt Weather, the ultimate marine forecast app. Thanks for tuning into the show this week. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, click on that notification bell, and for more information on Small Boat Big Ocean TV, make your way over to our webpage, and while you're there, be sure to sign up for our blog to get all the latest behind-the-scenes info.